Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Class, if you'd like to call Dr. Shealy, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. You might want to write that down. Brad is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor, is with us live from Springfield, Missouri. Dr. Shealy, are there any things that you'd like to bring up before I go through this list of items that I have?
Well, did you get the, I don't think I sent it forwarded to you, but did you get the one about insects disappearing?
Well, I didn't. I have read that story, and that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about. I'm glad you've mentioned that. This is very disconcerting.
Of course. I mean, we literally depend upon insects.
Yes, yes, because of the food chain. You know, the bigger insects eat the smaller insects. The insects eat the cow poop, and they help decompose the cow poop. You know, you're absolutely right. I mean, these cows lay these cow patties everywhere on our farm, and then within a couple of days, you've got these dung beetles that are eating the cow poop, and then you're absolutely right. And of course, there's pollination. Yes,
that's the big one. Right?
Absolutely. And well, the bottom line is, well, why don't you tell us what the bottom line is, Dr. Shealy?
Poison is poison. If it's killing the insect, it's killing us.
Yes.
That's simple.
Yeah. And the article that I'm looking at, Dr. Shealy, is TheGuardian.com. Headline, Plummeting Insect Numbers Threaten Collapse of Nature. Insects could vanish within a century at the current rate of decline, says Global Review. Why are insects in decline, and can we do anything about it? And the answer is yes, we can, because we've caused this, in my opinion. Would you agree with that, Dr. Shealy, that
Absolutely.
we did this? Mm-hmm. Where do you think the origin of some of the collapse of insect populations is coming from? Where do you see it?
It started, I mean, in my opinion, it started with DDT back in in World War II.
Yes.
I mean, it was sprayed everywhere.
Yeah, people were even doused with DDT. Well, let's get those, let's disinfect you from louse and just spray people with DDT. No mask, no respirators, just let's give them a good dusting. Yeah, then what happened?
Well, it was interesting, banned in this country, but still is used some places in the world and imported back into the country on produce. Like all the poison that we occasionally, rarely ban.
Mm-hmm. And from my memory, DDT does not decompose in less than a couple of decades, if I'm not mistaken. It takes a long time.
Well, even a day is too long for my opinion.
Yes. And so we have killed bugs. And if you think about it, class, and I'm sure this happened to many of us. How many of you had butterfly nets when you were a child? How many? And, catch a butterfly and, monarch butterflies, you'd see them and you could look at them and they'd be in the yard. How many butterflies do you see today? Not too many. How many flies? You know, we used to have a lot of flies. Being a cattle farm, there'd be flies everywhere. Don't see very many flies anymore. Literally, we don't see very many flies anymore. And we used to have bees. How about the bugs on the windshields? You drive along and, you know, your windshield be covered with bugs. Is that the case anymore? I don't think so. How about the birds, the squirrels, the chipmunks, the rabbits? Where'd they go? Is it similar at your farm?
Tonto.
But there aren't very many, right?
No, it's markedly decreased.
So decreased, class, that it's quite obvious to those of us who are farmers. And Tonto is Dr. Shealy's dog and family member. And so he catches, you know, some wild animals. And that's what they do. That's what dogs do. But I'm looking at, okay. According to this article, it says that we're looking at a 2.5% annual loss over the last 25 to 30 years in insects. That's an enormous amount.
That means between 60 and 70 some odd percent.
Correct. And I also think, Dr. Shealy, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, not only is it the insecticides. Well, heck, you know, we are, Monsanto has Roundup ready seeds so that the bugs cannot eat the harvest. So that's absolutely killing the ecosystem as well. I mean, no question about it. So we have fewer bugs, and we think that's great. We think that's wonderful. You know, less bugs in our food. Yeah, that's great. Except we need the bugs. We absolutely need the bugs. And then we add to that the electromagnetic radiation. And I believe, and it's going to be very difficult for someone to convince me otherwise, Dr. Shealy, that the electromagnetic radiation, the wavelengths of these high-frequency cell tower radiations, I believe are confusing the navigation system of bees.
Wow.
I really believe that.
I'm not surprised.
Because they have little antennas. They have little antennas, which would be roughly between an eighth of a wavelength and maybe a quarter of a wavelength of the frequency of the electromagnetic radiation from the 2.4 gigahertz cell communications. So we have in our homes, not my home, I'm sure not your home, but other homes. I shouldn't be using our. I mean, sometimes I say the word our as in collectively, and I don't mean it. I mean in their homes, they have these Wi-Fi routers. So if you live in a neighborhood and you all mow your grass and you put weed and feed on your lawn to kill the bugs, and then you have your network routers and your internet routers, and you're blasting Wi-Fi throughout your house that can be picked up from many houses across the neighborhood, those electromagnetic frequencies are leaving your house, going outside where the bugs like to be and like to live. And I think you're confusing the bugs with gotta have wireless. It's too hard. Heck, it's too hard, Dr. Shealy, to have a computer printer with a wire connected from the computer to the printer. And it's too hard to have a wire from the mouse to the computer. And it's too hard to have a cable, a wire or a cable from the keyboard to the computer. And it's too hard to have a wire from the computer to the router. So let's do it all wirelessly. And heck, while we're at it, let's do the TV at the same time. Let's make that wireless. And you know what? We need a smart refrigerator because we're not smart enough to know whether something is going bad in our refrigerator or not. So let's have the refrigerator tell us and communicate to our phone.
And that would be to your phone, not mine. And I know it's not to your phone either.
Right. Dr. Shealy, it's upsetting. It's upsetting because the GDP is allowing this. And when I say GDP, I'm talking about the generally dumb public. And I'm convinced that they're getting dumber by the second.
Well,
in the studio where I am right now.
In the long run, however, although the public does have a potential for changing, it is the concerted evil of the government itself that allowed it all to start and keep going. Because government should never have allowed poisons to be widespread like this.
Well, we were mistaken, Dr. Shealy. You, I, and so many others. Initially, we thought we were trained in the public training camps that government is our friend. Government is here to protect us. Government serves us. Government really wants the best for our people and our country. We were taught that the police were here to protect and serve. And we've been finding out in a rude awakening that none of that is true. None of that's true. The Federal Communications Commission, and I'm going to use a word, and I'd like to describe this word a little bit more. Some people might say it's been taken over by corporate interests. I won't say it's been taken over. I would say it's captured. Captured.
Well, that has been true for, I suspect, at least 110 years.
Well, I'm talking about just the Federal Communications Commission has been captured.
Right, but I'm talking about the government in general being taken over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When Woodrow Wilson sold out and sold the country, essentially, to the Committee of 300 in bringing in the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, 1913.
That was the real beginning of the end of independent and somewhat wise government. Although if we look back at what happened even before that, the unbelievable stupidity of the government as wiping out the Indian nations.
Yes, there's no question. I totally agree with you. So what we've done is we've killed many birds and reptiles and amphibians and fish. You know, fish eat insects too. So we're taking away the food source. We're taking away our food source by our own ignorance, by letting the government corporations get in bed with industry, or letting industry get in bed with government corporations and destroy the planet, including but not limited to nuclear power generation. We'll be right back with Dr. Shealy. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. So we're talking about insects and the insects collapse, and, well, birds eat insects. There are more than 350,000 species of beetle, and many of them have declined, especially the dung beetle, the one that I've been talking about here on the farm. And that's absolutely true. We have seen a dramatic collapse in the number of dung beetles. And, you know, I don't want to be gross here on the air, but it's really simple. The cows poop, and they make these patties, these brown patties across the fields, and then within days, hundreds, maybe thousands of dung beetles will just appear in the cow pies, and they will just start to fall apart and disintegrate and become fertilizer. And we depend on the dung beetles to do that. And then what about the flies, the ants, the aphids, the shield bugs, and the crickets? What about them?
You know what's decreased most in my garden? Ladybugs.
Worms. Ladybugs? Yeah.
I remember buying some about 15 or more years ago, but even those have just essentially, and I don't use any poison.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not you. It's everything around you.
I know. It's the air and the water and government.
Mm-hmm. I had a chat with friends of the family over the weekend, and they were talking about GMO wheat, and they had stored some pasta for years, many years, and they were thinking that they should switch to non-GMO pasta and organic. And I made the statement, well, but now rain from the sky has glyphosate in it. So you're going to get glyphosate in your organic wheat. And there's no way around it.
Yeah, the only way you could have something organic is to have a totally air-filtered, controlled greenhouse or underground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, and I guess the statement I made was, I don't know if it's better to have organic, certified organic, versus wheat that was grown and made into pasta 7 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know.
No,
I don't have the...
Yeah, we can't figure that one out. We know how bad it is. We can't tell you how to make it good. Right.
Dr. Shealy, I'm taking a page out of your book, and I'm writing a book, and I've already started writing this book, and the book will be on the, let's call it Lessons from Vinny. And the book has all kinds of things in it. And I just wanted to run one of the items by you. And it'll be about plumbing, electrical. And this is the way I do things, which is not necessarily the way others do things. But this is the book of 67 years of my experiences, learning how to do things better, faster, smarter, more durable. So it's plumbing, heating, electrical, food, clothing, automobiles, farming, electronics, entertainment, off-grid, buying furniture, communications, gas versus diesel, guns, decision-making, computers, home design, how to buy a farm, flooring, toilets, insurance, septic systems, negotiating. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's like
an encyclopedia.
Hundreds. It is. It's an encyclopedia of how I do things. And I wanted to share with you one of the things in this book. And I even have recipes, my favorite recipes. And I call this one Vincent's Survival Soup. Now, the reason I call it Survival Soup is because you can buy cans from the store with the ingredients for the survival soup, and it will keep for quite a while. And I'd like to hear what you think of the health aspects of this particular, very easy to make, 3 minutes to make it, survival soup, when we come back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. I'm Vin Finelli. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and I've mentioned that I'm writing a book, and it has items like tire rotation, buying tires, buying a spare wheel, raising chickens, how to buy a tractor, roof pitch, types of fencing, raising animals, all kinds of things. And one of the areas is some recipes. And here's a recipe, Dr. Shealy, which I'd love to have your medical opinion on in terms of nutrition and what you think of this. So I'm calling this Vincent's Survival Soup, and it's made with mostly cans of ingredients. It contains, it's spinach soup, spinach and potato soup. 1 can, which is about 13 ounces of cooked spinach, 1 about 14 or 15 ounce can of potatoes, a 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper, a can of water, 1 sliced clove of garlic, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and then you just heat that in a saucepan until it's almost boiled, and then you can serve it. Now, if you need to extend it for more people, you can add another can of potatoes. What are your thoughts on that as a survival type soup?
Sounds wonderful. It makes me salivate.
Okay. Do you think? Well, it's quite excellent, and you can. adjust the amount of crushed red pepper to taste. You can add more or less, but it's quite excellent. I'm not trying to brag. It's just I've come across this, and why? Because I wanted to eat something that was healthy and not be full of pasta. And there are, it's getting more difficult to avoid wheat. So that's where this came from. And you can store potatoes for years in cans, and the same with spinach. Keep them cool at a stable temperature, and both those cans will last a long time. As compared to spending more money on freeze-dried foods. This won't last as long, obviously, but it's way less expensive, and it's easy to do. So those were my thoughts. Any other comments before we get into health questions, Dr. Shealy?
No, sounds great.
Okay. Sharon in Montana, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norman Shealy.
Good morning. I have to agree with you on soups. You can can them, but also if you don't have freeze-dried, you can always just dehydrate a lot of your vegetables. And if you just keep them in a dry jar, I had some dehydrated and it was just an outside shed. Of course, we're in Montana, so you wouldn't do it down south where it's humid. But they lasted like 10 years, and you can make soups from that too, real easily.
I've got a question for you. For you, Sharon. We've got some kale, and we bought kale, and we've tried dehydrating with olive oil and a little bit of salt and pepper. Can you just dehydrate kale in a dehydrator?
Yeah, I wouldn't even add oil. Oil's going to go rancid. I take kale because I tend to grow too much of that stuff. And I shred it a little bit, just make strips of it, kind of small shred, kind of like the idea of coleslaw, but probably bigger strips. And I throw it on my dehydrator tray or air dehydrate. I've got one of those little solar ones. And then I just crush it and put it in a jar, and I add it to things like my spaghetti if I make it, or lasagna, or any kind of soups. You can just throw a little bit in, and you're kind of sneaking in a bunch of veggies that way. And
okay, so that would be the
stuff, everything.
Yeah, so it would be the consistency of, let's say, parsley, right? When you're done.
Yeah, whatever. I just cut it small. You can dry it in big slabs too, big leaves, but it just goes quicker if you shred it, and it dries more evenly. I just take a knife and slice it. You know what I mean? So it'll fluff up a little better. And I cut out it got on the large side. I cut out the hard part, the core stem a little bit down by the bottom if it's real thick. But you actually wouldn't have to, because when you crush it up, it all turns into little pieces anyway. But you can do that, or you can just leave it in flakes and throw it into your soup, and I think it would retain. I just haven't done that. You can store a whole lot in a pint or quart jar by dehydrating it and turning it into a bit of a powder. And it's really handy. You can throw it in all kinds of food. But my question was a couple things. One's just a random question that I thought Dr. Shealy could answer. I've managed to get to 62 years old, and I find it's a bugger to get up off the floor if you're sitting down on the floor. And I actually work out 3 times a week. Now, I'm not one of the buff and tough people, but I've been doing this for almost 2.5 years now, so I'm not like wimpy weak. You know what I mean? I can lift weights and do all kinds of stuff. So I'm curious, why is it so hard to get up from the floor? And I watch a bunch of my peers having the same problem.
Well, it sounds as if some of the muscles in your hip flexors, et cetera, are weak. Now, have you got your shoes on?
Well, not at the moment. I'm wearing house slippers.
Good. Okay. Take your right hand and take your slippers off, and take your right hand and first tap very firmly, tap on the back of your left hand.
Oh, well, I got the phone down. Okay. Right hand, tap on the left of my... Say that again. I'm sorry.
Tap on the back of your left hand with your right hand. Then reach down and tap on the top of your left foot, and see if the vibratory feeling is as strong in your feet as it is in your hands.
I would think so. It feels about the same.
Okay, now do both feet. If they both are the same, you probably do not have neuropathy. This is a do-it-yourself test.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny one to do. No, they're the same. I don't think you have any neuropathy, but, we get together with a group of other people our age, and if anybody gets down, I notice the vast majority of them have a hard time getting back up. You have to hold on a piece of furniture or something, And I'm going, what happened here? You know, just getting older stuff seems to have these interesting side effects.
There's a wonderful book called Stretch Anatomy.
Uh-huh.
It gives you specific workouts for every muscle group in your body.
Okay.
And it sounds to me as if you need some extra attention to those particular muscles. You know, it's the hip flexors, extensors that are...
Yeah, I might have to look into that then. Yeah, because I do a lot of the machines, and I do the treadmill and the bike, and I added the stair climber because I found climbing stairs was getting harder, so I started adding that to the workout. But my other more serious question, I was just thought you might know because I know you're an older age too. What is your take on mammograms? Do you find them useful and necessary or not? And maybe how often?
Well, personally, I think they suck. And I'm about
really?
I do not. I believe that if you regularly, with your fingers, when you're taking your bath or whatever, you know, gently feel both breasts very thoroughly, you will pick up anything long before a mammogram will. And as long as you don't find any not a lump, a hard spot, or unusual tender spot in either breast, I wouldn't worry about a mammogram personally.
Uh-huh. I was just curious because I was working at a homeless warm-up type event with a lady, and she works in a mammogram place, and she was explaining how that the newest mammogram machines, which we actually happen to have in this area, don't have even as much radiation as if you were to take a trip in an airplane for quite a ways. You wouldn't get near the radiation through the mammogram. And I was kind of curious what you thought, because I do have a friend who, through a mammogram, they caught a small lump at the back near breastbone, and it was super highly one of those real aggressive cancers, and they were able to remove it, and she's doing fine about 10 years later. But I was just kind of curious because I do think that sometimes they diagnose things and make it a little more critical than it maybe would be. You know, some of the, like I have a friend who had when they said it could be, so she had all removed and went through all that, and I'm thinking, well, is it could be or is it? You know what I mean? That was my thinking. But you don't feel that they probably offer any benefits, or just you wouldn't do it, or?
Well, you know, I just don't like according to what my daughter told me about mammograms, she felt as if she was, you know, being pressed between two lead, you know, being squeezed between two lead metal things.
I've had one. They use a hard plastic thing, but yeah, you think you kind of put yourself in a torture chamber a little bit.
My wife never had one in her life.
Uh-huh.
And again, my opinion is if you examine your breast regularly, you don't need to do it.
Uh-huh. Okay. I was just kind of curious what your take was on it. I've been weighing out pros and cons. I've had them once in a while, but I don't know. I kind of,
Sharon?
My grandma probably had breast cancer, and my aunt for sure did and died of it. So I kind of felt like maybe the pros outweighed any cons, you know, just to be proactive. Yes, Vincent.
Sharon, I looked into this, well over a year ago, and I got mixed results in researching this. 3D mammography is claimed to be better than just two-dimension mammography, 2D. Mm-hmm. And the hospital claimed that it was about the same radiation level as 2D. And I looked it up, and I found that it's more, and I also found that it's less. So it may actually depend on the equipment that's being used. Uh-huh. So it may be 2 to 3 times as much, and it may be less than a 2D mammogram. So I would before I got involved in it, I would want to find out what the equipment was, and I'd want to read the specs. And then I'd want to figure out if I trusted the specs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I was wondering, what the take was on it. I've kind of weighed pros and cons, and at this point, I think occasionally, maybe not every year, but that probably the pros outweigh the cons, especially given there's a little bit of that history in my family. But I was just kind of wondering, what especially Dr. Shealy's taken. I didn't know you'd researched it, so I'm real interested in that too. But anyway, I'll let you get back to the show. I was just kind of curious on both those things. I thought, well,
before you go, Sharon, Dr. Mercola's website, mercola.com, says new 3D mammography significantly increases radiation exposure and your risk of radiation-induced cancer. That's what Dr. Mercola's website says. So that's what I found out, too. I found out that it's more and that it's less. And the answer is I don't know. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and I'm so glad that Sharon called in with the question about mammograms. And it sounds to me like Dr. Shealy and Dr. Mercola are in sync with their thoughts. And let me just read something from Mercola.com. And it says this new 3D mammography significantly increases radiation exposure and your risk of radiation-induced cancer. Goes on to say breast cancer has become big business, and a routine mammography is one of its primary profit centers. Mammograms deliver ionizing radiation, which is known to contribute to cancer. New and improved 3D mammograms still require mechanical compression and expose you to even more radiation. While mammograms are touted as the best way to prevent breast cancer death, studies do not support this claim. On the contrary, mounting research shows that routine mammograms harm far more women than they save. A recent study challenges the validity of mammogram screenings, concluding that mammograms have little to no influence in the reduction of the number of women who ultimately die of breast cancer. According to a 2011 meta-analysis, mammography breast cancer screening led to 30% overdiagnosis and overtreatment, which equates to an absolute risk of 0.5%. That's an increased risk of 0.5%. There's also the risk of getting a false negative, meaning that a life-threatening cancer is missed. Cancer screening is not to be misconstrued as a form of cancer prevention. Preventing breast cancer is far more important and powerful than simply trying to detect it after it has already formed. Dr. Shealy, you're
all the way big
thoughts?
Blue. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a waste of money, time, energy, and life.
And I was reading about, let's see, where is that? Okay, radiation is a known cause of breast cancer. Researchers in the recent years have become concerned about the radiation exposures from medical imaging, particularly CT scans. A 2009 analysis estimated that CT scans cause about 29,000 cancers and 14,500 deaths per year. So going to get it checked out can cause it. That's how I read that, Dr. Shealy. 29,000 cancers a year and 14,500 deaths a year from radiation exposure from the medical village. That's what I read.
Remember, in July 2000, the JAMA had a major article that the third leading cause of death in the United States is the medical system. They said 225,000 people die because of the medical system. And there was
Dr. Shealy, yeah. Go ahead, please continue.
A book came out not long after that called Death by Medicine, and they said it was grossly underestimated. It was probably closer to 750,000.
Per year?
Yeah.
In other words, $750K per year.
The patient is signed out as dying of a disease without mentioning that it was aggravated or sped up by the treatment.
Yeah, and our government corporation has done that with wars. For example, in the Vietnam War, instead of listing someone as killed in action, they would say he died of an accident with his Humvee or his vehicle. That's what killed him. The shot the shot through his torso had nothing to do with it. It just that he crashed his Jeep or his Humvee. Yeah, that's changing the cause. Just like President Gerald Ford changed the bullet strikes of President John F. Kennedy, changed the location of the bullets. Check it out. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Dr. Norman Shealy. Dr. Shealy, over the weekend we had an interesting event here at the farm. As you know, we raise black cows, black Angus cows. And one of our mama cows had bloat. And so her belly got bigger and bigger and bigger, and she could die from that very quickly. So what we did, Dr. Shealy, was one of the treatments is to mix about a half a cup of baking soda, bicarbonate of soda, with about a half a quart of water and feed that to her. Now, of course, she doesn't want it because she's bloated and she's like full of enormous amount of pressure from this gas in her rumen. Well, one of the things that you do is you take a 3/4 inch diameter hose. I'm talking like a garden hose. So you kind of clean it, about 4 to 5 feet long, and you slowly put it down her left side of her mouth, down into her digestive tract, and then you very slowly pour this mixture of half a cup of baking soda and a half a quart of water, and it helps remove the gas. And then you can hear the gas coming out of the hose. It sounds barbaric, it sounds brutal, but it's a life-saving treatment. Is there anything like that in human anatomy where that kind of an emergency procedure is used?
I am not aware of such. Now, that doesn't mean a person who's familiar with the emergency ward might know that. I've never heard of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was just wondering. I'll tell you what. The worst part of farming, the absolute worst part, the part that I really dislike, the most painful part, is the death part. It is sometimes it's more than I can bear. And as I was going through this procedure this weekend with our family, we were all involved in this. I was thinking about you and Dr. Sergei Sorin and other doctors I know. How do you face this, Dr. Shealy? How can you, day after day after day after day, how can you face this? Well,
you know my favorite word in the entire language is detach.
Yes.
And if you have to face something on a regular basis, you must learn to detach from it. Now, I have to say, as a neurosurgeon, I never learned to detach from children with serious problems because, of course, my kids were quite young at that time. And I did have much more trouble, dealing with serious brain damage in a child than I did with an adult. But you do train yourself.
I have been unable to do that. I'm talking about with the animals here on the farm, whether it be a cat or a dog, or a calf or a cow or a bull. It tears me up every time. And I want to do everything within my power to make sure that animal does not die. And one of the things that is very difficult, and I have not figured out the answer to this. In my mind,
right,
is what is, we can take a 22 cartridge and kill that animal, put it out of its misery. But doing that is extremely difficult for me, extremely difficult, and making that call is extremely
that would be
difficult.
even more difficult than watching it die naturally.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. And, I've learned that veterinarians have a very high suicide rate. And it makes sense because people bring their animals to the vet and say, would you put him to sleep? There's no putting him to sleep. It's killing him. It's killing that animal. And the veterinarian, I guess, just, okay, that's what we have to do, kills that animal and then kills the next one. And what's really, really sad is the animal doesn't know the veterinarian very well, if at all. The animal knows the family, and the family can't stand to put little Fluffy down. So the family leaves Fluffy with the veterinarian. The animal's terrified, has no idea what's going on, doesn't know anybody around Fluffy, and the owner can't bear to be with Fluffy at the time when it's most needed. Very, very sad. And I think that must take a toll on veterinarians.
Another profession where there's supposedly a high incidence of suicide is dentistry.
Yes.
I don't understand that one either, but...
Well, I was talking with Howard Shane about that. Howard Shane, Dr. Howard Shane is a dentist. Yeah. He's, and I know you know Dr. Howard Shane and his wife, M.L. Shane, both dentists. And he and I were talking about that, and he said, dentists have a very high suicide rate, which, of course, I knew. But he said, nobody wants to go to the dentist. Nobody.
It's really interesting. I've never learned to be afraid of a dentist or feel... I really just get so relaxed. I went in for dental cleaning about 10 days ago. And I said, well, I'm ready for my nap. Mm-hmm. I almost fall asleep. I just detach and breathe deep and barely am remembering to open my mouth.
Well, okay. That's exactly what I do, Dr. Shealy. The arms of a dental chair are designed so you can grip them and really hold on tight, and it makes it worse. It makes it worse. So I do exactly what you do. I detach, and I think of TJ and, how TJ plays with me, and TJ's our dog. And, I think about happy things. And I just...
His dog, by the way, which is the size of a small calf.
Yeah, TJ is 200 plus pounds. He's a pretty big boy. Oh, and that's another thing that I wanted to ask you about. Snoring. And I want to record this. TJ snores every night, and he feels he has to be in the same room as we are. So we have this we have this moving blanket, and I say, okay, TJ, on the blanket, good boy. What a good boy. So he lies down on the blanket, and then, as soon as we get into bed, he comes in and lies down on the rug next to the bed, and he snores all night long, and it's loud snoring. Does Tonto snore?
I don't know, because I do not allow any animal to sleep in my bedroom. I find long ago that they make noise. Even if they don't snore, they make other noises. So I don't like to have an animal in my bedroom.
Well, we don't either. However, we don't sleep with the doors closed because we want to make sure we can hear all the sounds. And what happens is the cats come in, they take turns, they jump on the bed, we throw them off, they jump on the bed, all night long. And they can't read, so a sign isn't going to do any good saying no cats. And TJ feels that he has to protect us, so he has to be with us. Something is going on with, and I believe, in this planet that's causing animals to want to stay with their human family. I really believe. I'm talking about cats and dogs. And I can't explain it, but this is something that is new. This is, within the last couple of years. This didn't happen before, but now it does. No matter where we go, our animals follow us. Do you find that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, the interesting thing is, when I'm up during the day, both dogs want to come in the room where I am.
That's what I mean.
And when I'm exercising, for instance, they just come in and snooze while I'm exercising.
Now, is this the way it used to be years and years ago, where they would follow you? I would think that they follow you into the kitchen, they'd follow you into the living room, they'd follow you into the dining room, wherever you are, including your exercise room. Is this the way it was years ago, or is this a relatively new phenomenon?
It's hard for me to say because, Tonto is 15 years old now, and he's been this way to some extent ever since we've had him, so he likes to be with us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I've written down the Bliss essential oils, Dr. Shealy. Can we go through all of the Blisses, what they do? And the reason I'm so interested in revisiting this in this particular class is because I am finding more and more people are really depressed.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously depressed. For example, I met this young person, probably less than 30 years old, and she said, I have a right to be happy. That startled me. I think you have a right to pursue happiness, but I don't think you have a right to happiness. Because whose job is it to make this girl happy? Is it my job? Is it their parents' job? Whose job is it to make this girl happy? Or is it her job? And what does that mean? So I think that is saying I'm not happy very often, but I have a right to be happy. What are your thoughts about the amount of depression? Are you seeing record amount of depression?
Well, to be quite honest, for at least the last 10 or 15 years, my impression is that 40% of Americans are clinically depressed, and another 40% have what I call preclinical depression. In other words, they're not quite depressed, but they sure are not happy.
So that leaves...
So about 80% of people are not happy.
And so there are 20% of us who are happy? And that's it?
More or less, yes.
Well, I would have to say I think 100% of the cops are not happy, as evidenced by their by their behavior.
I would have to say 100% of politicians are not happy.
There you go. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, very quickly, I just wanted to say that there's an article on Drudge Report, and it says lack of sleep could damage DNA and affect repairability, possibly raising cancer risk. University of Hong Kong study finds. There you go. It's great that they came to the party, but you said it a long time before they did. Years before. At least 7 years that I know of, Dr. Shealy.
Well, yeah, I've probably been saying it for at least 60 or more, because to me it just makes common sense. And we know that if this is your only bad habit of not sleeping 7 or 8 hours minimum, then your life expectancy is the same as someone who smokes about 1 pack of cigarettes a day.
If you only have one bad habit of not sleeping 7 or 8 hours a day,
right. Your life is shortened by about 7 years.
Well, that's easy to fix, Dr. Shealy. All people need to do is actually get some sleep. Yep. Okay, Air Bliss.
Yes.
Oh.
Well,
Air Bliss, Fire Bliss.
Okay.
Earth.
The Bliss oils came about because I had discovered these circuits, electrical circuits in the body, all of which have either 12 or 13 specific acupuncture points. And to stimulate it electrically with the best kind of electrical stimulation takes at least 20 minutes. And, people are not going to do it. So it'll be 8 years ago in April, I began to look at ways of stimulating these acupuncture points with specific blends of essential oils that actually activate the acupuncture points. And the first one I came up with actually was Air Bliss. And Air Bliss works in it takes 30 seconds to put it on all 13 points. And within half an hour, for instance, your DHEA came once from 0 to 10.4. And 5 is the lower limit of normal. And in other words, what we found is 80% of people with anxiety or depression improve significantly by using Air Bliss once a day.
Dr. Shealy, you said almost 8 years this April. Does that mean that I was one of the first to try your Air Bliss, which was called Bliss at the time?
I believe so, because when I first started, I thought I was just going to do, that one to make oxytocin. It was so good, I had to develop it for all of them. Yeah, you came into the radio station, and, right after I had discovered it.
I remember that. I remember, Dr. Shealy, you were in the studio. You were ending your broadcast, and there was a couple minutes of commercial announcements and news at the top of the hour, and this was in the afternoon at KWTO class, AM 560, Springfield, Missouri. And so Dr. Shealy would broadcast in the same studio, and that's where we first met, in the radio studio. So his broadcast was the hour before mine. He would do his broadcast. It would end at maybe 59 minutes after the hour, and mine would start at top of the hour. So we had maybe a minute or two to say hello, and he would hop out of the seat, and I would hop in the seat and get behind the microphone. And one day, he had this little bottle, this blue bottle, in his hand, and he slid it across the studio table to me, and he said, "Here, this is for you," or words to that effect. And I said, "Well, thank you. That's really nice. What is it?" And he told me it was Bliss. And I said, "Okay, so what does it do?" "It'll put you in a state of bliss." I said, "Well, okay, how do I do it?" And he gave me the instructions, the map of the body, if you will, of where to put it. And I went into the men's room, and I applied this, and wow, I was in a state of bliss. I mean, I really was. And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Air Bliss, and it boosts oxytocin and neurotensin. And that is what, Dr. Shealy, would you call that bonding?
Is a neuroleptic. And a neuroleptic is the original neurochemical that we make to detach.
And for oxytocin, that's the bonding, the morality,
the
love
hormone. Right.
Yeah. Let's talk more about that when we come back. And we'll also talk about Fire Bliss. If you're interested in any of the items that we're talking about, the Bliss essential oils, you can go to normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, and you'll find these products, the same ones that the Finelli family uses. Dr. Shealy, we're talking about depression, and it's so widespread. I keep hearing it more and more, almost everywhere I go. Does Air Bliss...
Yeah, go ahead.
Does Air Bliss treat depression, anxiety, and symptoms of menopause?
It can do all of those, yes. And because oxytocin is really one of the key molecules for your mood in general. Oxytocin is what I call the feel-good hormone. Every known disease is associated with low levels of oxytocin.
Dr. Shealy, when a woman is going to have a child, and that woman opts for a cesarean section or is put out, if you will, out of consciousness, does that affect the level of oxytocin?
Oh, tremendously. During labor and during the entire delivery process, the woman produces huge amounts of oxytocin. Even a spinal anesthetic blocks that, as does being put to sleep. So that baby comes in without its welcome to the world oxytocin shot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the woman is happy, if the child is wanted, they recover from that. But it is one of the contributors to lifelong poor self-esteem.
Lifelong poor self-esteem as a result of what could be prevented by just having a natural childbirth rather than having a spinal block?
Exactly.
Or a cesarean section?
You bet.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shealy, are we our own worst enemies? Are we causing the problems?
Of course. But then, 40% of kids are out of wedlock. Those children have nothing going from them from the day of conception, because during the entire 9 months in utero, the woman is debating whether to get rid of the baby or get one way or another, not wanting the baby, and so she doesn't even produce the day-to-day normal fluctuations in oxytocin to help it feel welcome. Those kids have a very high incidence of prematurity and all kinds of problems.
And we're talking about Air Bliss, class, and it's a simple roll-on essential oil. And it's so easy to use. For me, it takes 2 seconds. Literally. Well, maybe 3. Fire Bliss, Dr. Shealy, and DHEA.
And now that is, of course, DHEA is the original anti-stress hormone. And if you're healthy, at age 25, you are at peak production of DHEA. But by age 40, most people have lost 25 to 30% of what they had at age 25, and by age 80, they've lost about 90% of what they had at age 25. And DHEA is, well, it's critical for your immune system, for your energy, everything. And it is raised an average of 60% of what you start with by using Fire Bliss on its 12 specific acupuncture points. Again, takes 30 seconds a day.
Dr. Shealy, so are you saying that we are at age 25, we are at the maximum, at the peak age to deal with the stresses of life at age 25, and as we get older,
for the average healthy person, yes.
And as we get older, we are less able to deal with stress?
Exactly.
Wow.
Now, I have 4 ways of raising DHEA naturally. So at 86, my DHEA is equal to, well, many people at age 25, but certainly the average person at age 30.
And how do we do that, Dr. Shealy, naturally raise DHEA?
Well, Fire Bliss is the top of my list. My youth formula is number 2. Number 3 is Magnesium Lotion. And finally, Natural Progesterone Cream. Natural Progesterone Cream is the only hormone that I personally recommend for people, both men and women. It helps protect the prostate from cancer and benign prostatic hypertrophy, but also raises DHEA. Each of these 4 techniques raises your DHEA an average of 60%.
Okay, I'm doing 3 of the 4, the top 3, Dr. Shealy. I use Fire Bliss, your youth formula, which are capsules of vitamin C and MSM, and your magnesium lotion. I'm not using natural progesterone cream. What is that made with, Dr. Shealy?
Actually, it's made in a test tube, but the product comes out exactly the same as natural progesterone made in the body.
Okay.
And it's safe.
Okay. And how would you use the natural progesterone cream?
It comes in a pump bottle. Now, a full pressure of the pump will give you about almost an inch long bit of the cream, and I recommend sort of half a pump for men especially. Now, before age 60, you can get one called Adam's Prostate Care, which has not only progesterone, but also some other things like beta-sitosterol, etc., that are good for the prostate. But after age 60, even for men, I recommend the natural progesterone cream.
Okay. And this is, no prescription is required, is that correct?
No, it's over the counter.
Okay. And do you sell it on your website?
Yes, we have our own brand called EU, Gesterone. EU means true Gesterone. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And so we're talking about raising the DHEA, and that would be the anti-stress hormone. Would that also be the mother hormone?
It is called that frequently, yes, because it helps you make testosterone, etc.
Okay. And Dr. Shealy, I've noticed that as people get older, people we know, they are less inclined, less likely to want to make decisions. They want to postpone it so that they never have to make decisions. Is that a result of the changing levels of DHEA in our bodies?
Well, it's part of it, but there are many, many things that change. It depends on your overall health habits. The better your overall health habits, the better everything is. And even at age 80, a person who's got all the good health habits is going to be ahead of someone who's got or lacking 5 major health habits.
When you talk about magnesium in the body, you have developed a magnesium lotion. And I remember you saying for 7 years that about 80% of us are deficient in magnesium. Is that still the case?
That is true. And the reason is our soil is highly depleted of magnesium. And that's been true for at least the last 50 or more years. And it was, it began to be noticed in the 70s.
So those who say, well, it's okay because I take a multivitamin, what would your answer be to that?
Well, the interesting thing is we have found that all forms of oral magnesium are poorly absorbed. So you're wasting your money and time to some extent to take an oral magnesium supplement. We've found that through the skin works at least 10 times better and more effectively.
Mm-hmm. And I use the spray. I know you like the lotion, and you just put some on your hand, put it on your butt, right after getting out of the shower or the bath. I do the same thing, except I spray it on my chest.
Yeah, that's
I hold
fine.
my breath. I hold my breath. I don't inhale it.
Right.
And it worked for me. It works great. And I had an irregular heartbeat, and I think a lot of people must have the same thing, Dr. Shealy.
Oh yeah, it is the number one cause of an irregular heartbeat or atrial fibrillation, or very irregular heartbeat. But 86% of people with depression are low in magnesium.
Dr. Shealy, when I lived in Virginia before I met you, I'd go for my annual physical, and the nurse said to me, "You have an irregular heartbeat. Did you know that?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that." And, I met with the doctor, and he never said, "Here's what you do. All you have to do to fix this is use Dr. Shealy's Magnesium Lotion. Never said that. Never said anything. Never said take some multivitamins. Had no comment about an irregular heartbeat.
Yeah, I know. Well, the average physician, unfortunately, is unbelievably uneducated and stupid when it comes to nutrition.
And why is that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, even when I was in medical school, I went to medical school between 1952 and 1956. I don't remember a lecture on nutrition. Not one. There wasn't one.
Mm-hmm. Well, back in the 1970s, I used to race cars. I would build engines, and I would race the cars at the track. And not once did I ever say to anybody, y'all have any bad gas out there? Because I'd like to put that in my car and race with it. Never said I look for the best fuel I could get. And shouldn't we be doing that for our own bodies? We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. And Dr. Shealy, I was just looking that you wrote a book on natural progesterone cream.
Yes, indeed. That was the first of my experiments for racing DHEA.
Mm-hmm. And it's available right now. Do you recommend that people just go to Amazon and get that if they'd like that book?
Yes. It's actually just a little 50-page booklet.
Okay. Very inexpensive. And Dr. Shealy, I found out that you wrote another book. And shoot, I'm in the... Oh, boy. This book is... I have to go back. I just bought it on the internet, and it's about your treatments and natural healing. And it looks like it's a hardcover book. I wish I had the title in front of me, but I clicked to a different page.
I think it's called Natural Healing Remedies. Natural Healing Remedies.
That's it.
Yeah. I've got 36 books, so that's one of them.
Dr. Shealy, you've been writing more than one book a year, aren't you?
Well, let's say more or less about one a year average.
That's incredible, absolutely incredible.
I'm working on a big one right now.
I'm looking forward to.
I'm sorry.
And can you tell us about that one?
Well, this is going to be on conscientiousness, because that is the key to health, wealth, and longevity. And this is going to be, one of my most important, why you should be and how you can be conscientious.
Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that one of the secrets, if not the most significant secret of living a long life, being
Absolutely.
Conscientious?
It's the one thing unequivocally that's been found to lead to the longest life, the healthiest life, and, interestingly, the lifelong greatest income.
So healthy, wealthy, and wise, being conscientious. Yeah, and that would be early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That'd be Benjamin Franklin.
Exactly.
So we got to get sleep, and you have to be conscientious. Dr. Shealy, would you say that it is universal in your experience that people who are conscientious are more successful than those who are not? I mean, okay. All right. And can you explain in your words what you mean by conscientious? And can you give us some examples?
It means organized and responsible. Those are the two keys to me, are well organized and responsible. Now, the interesting thing is only 2.7% of Americans are optimally conscientious, organized, and responsible. That is, 97.3% are missing 1, 2, 6 health habits.
Mm-hmm. And this organized and responsible, does that apply to not only health habits, but daily living routines?
Everything.
And chores and tasks?
Everything. Absolutely everything. You live it and breathe it.
Mm-hmm. When you write your books, Dr. Shealy, do you sit down and do it all at one time and just keep going and going and going, or do you write it as it comes to you? That's what I'm doing. The
fastest I've ever written a book is about 6 weeks, but it can go on for a year.
Yeah, and what I'm doing is I'm walking around with pen and paper, and as I see topics that I just need the topics. I know how to flesh them out. I don't have to research them. I know what the answers are in my mind, but I just have to get all the topics listed, and then I have to organize the topics, and then probably in 6 weeks or so I can flesh it out. But that's my plan. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us today and talking about.
Have a great day.
See you next Monday, Dr. Shealy. Yes, Dr. Shealy, medical doctor, broadcaster, surgeon of the year, author, farmer, Native American medicine man.